But my philosophy is very simple. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, say something, do something, get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble.
Strength and solidarity. The strength and solidarity. Divided is our nation, combating and fighting hatred. The mission, should you choose to accept it, is fighting racist. Psychology is just a space where we run in our simulations. We load you up with the tools, then we plug you into the matrix. So have a seat on the couch, now tell me your situation. Take a look in the mirror, be honest, just who you facing. Marginalized as a youth, what challenges were you faced with? Feeling you wasn't equal, told that you wouldn't make it. Your ID isn't real, got you constantly trying to fake it. Hiding behind masks in the closet till you can't take it. Getting harder to breathe, someone choking you on the pavement. Unspeakable violence attacking you cause you Asian. Accomplices we accomplish through collaboration, engaging, educating, evaluating one another, liberating the future of all our sisters and brothers, empowering, elevating all communities of color. Strength and solidarity. The strength and solidarity.
The Strength and Solidarity podcast is a conversational piece that invites scholars, community activists, leaders, artists, and entrepreneurs to discuss their work as accomplices in cultivating cross-racial ethnic solidarity. Hosted and produced by Pooja Mami Dana and Dr. Dana Deminari, our podcast team also includes our podcast interns, Alexis Rios and Petra Zabroga. The Strength and Solidarity podcast strives to engage, educate, evaluate, and empower communities of color one episode at a time. Our guest on today's podcast episode is with Dr. Reiko True, who was born in Niigata, Japan, 1933 and immigrated to the United States in 1958. She completed a social work master's program at the University of Berkeley and worked for 7 years for Alameda County Mental Health Services. She then completed a doctorate in clinical psychology at the California School for Professional Psychology in San Francisco. Her career, which spans nearly 60 years, has been devoted to advancing culturally and linguistically appropriate Asian and minority mental health services. She joined forces with a concerned group of Asian Pacific Islander activists to seek funding and created Asian Community Mental Health Services in Oakland, California, the first of its kind in the country. She joined the National Institute of Mental Health in 1975 and was instrumental in helping to develop a statewide network of Hispanic and Native American communities. After leaving the National Institute of Mental Health, she served as the first female and minority director of mental health and substance abuse services in San Francisco, overseeing a large mental health, substance abuse, and forensic medical and psychiatric service system throughout San Francisco. At the time of the Loma Prieta earthquake in 1989 in San Francisco, she was charged with organizing the citywide disaster mental health assistance initiative. Using her experience with San Francisco disaster assistance, she went to Japan as a Fulbright scholar in 1996 to help the Japanese victims of the Great Kansai Owaji earthquake and to train Japanese mental health professionals on disaster mental health assistance. In 1997, after Dr. Christine Hall, she was elected as the second female president of the Asian American Psychological Association. After retiring from San Francisco Public Health Department, where she worked from 2002 through 2015, she helped create and directed a master's program in psychology in Tokyo to improve the level of psychological care provided in Japan. In addition to her public service, she has also maintained a private practice counseling clinic in San Francisco in Japantown. Hi, Dr. True. Thank you so much for being here with us today on our podcast. So our goal for this podcast is to honor our roots and amplify the art of storytelling, much like how knowledge and wisdom are passed down in our communities. We'd like to pay homage to our ancestors, our grandparents, our elders, our parents, aunties, uncles, and anyone in our family and chosen family. We'd love for our guests to share what is important to them and for us to know what led them in their life's journey as a healer, scholar, leader, and/or activist.
I'm really honored and delighted to be part of this project. And I'm really looking forward to sharing with you my own story.
We're looking forward to that. And again, thank you so much for, spending your Saturday, morning your time, afternoon my time today. Truly, truly an honor to have you here today. So, with the first question, we're very much interested. Pooja and I were talking about this, and we are just in awe with who you are. You're a legend to me. I actually have one of your postcards. I have one of your postcards, and we want to hear from you, what your journey has been like as a woman of color, in your graduate program and onto your professional career. What was your journey like?
Well, thank you. Shall I start?
Yeah.
Yes,
Well, I didn't realize I was a woman of color because I grew up in Japan, and we were all colored. We were all Japanese. But my experience in Japan really strongly defined my path as I grew up. As you know, Japan is one of the Asian countries with very, very strong tradition of patriarchy. So that women really are expected to follow as they are child. They follow their father. As they get married, follow their husband. And as they get older, follow their son. And so they really are not expected to have their own kind of initiative or desires. Their role is to serve the needs of the males. And yet, my family is Homma family, has some extraordinary women. And they strongly influenced me as I chose my path. One of them is my aunt, who was a brilliant physician, but she was held up as by a very conservative community that we live in as someone not to follow. So oftentimes people around me would say, "Don't be like your aunt," because she is just defying the role of a woman. She was a brilliant physician, and she was instrumental in really making a big advance in treating tuberculosis, which was prevalent in that region, and prevalent in Asia in many countries. And so, as she did her accomplishment, many doctors from other Asian countries came to learn from her about how she really did this prevention of tuberculosis and treatment. And the other women that had strong impact on me was my mother, who I think was a very bright woman, but was was kind of really followed the tradition and was married to a very selfish man, and that she really had to subsume her own kind of desires, interests, and ambitions to, the needs of her husband and the children, to us, my brother and myself. But she, really drilled in me, instilled in me the joy of learning, studying. So that was like she would do anything to really help me and my brother find ways of learning when things were very hard in Japan during the war and after the war. Well, it was really very economically hard, but my mother tried her best to really make it possible for me. So those are the two women who really kind of gave me some permission to follow my own desires, even though all around me, Japanese societies really discouraged women's initiatives. So that's where I come from.
What did you? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think Dr. Donna and I can, in our own subjective life experiences, can relate to some of the dynamics that you've spoken about, like within your culture and within your family system. And I mean, I'm from India, and it is also a very patriarchal society, and just within the family system also, and just broader society, there's a lot of gender roles, and women, their voices are generally not heard as much. So it's very inspiring to hear how your aunt and your mom played such a pivotal role in your identity development.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And how I went into a helping profession, and especially kind of meeting the needs of women, it's because my mother was a victim of domestic violence. And it really strongly kind of instilled in me that I would want to do everything I can to help. If I couldn't help my mother, I wanted to help other women who are abused and really under distress. So that's, I think, really directed me into the helping profession. I came to U.S. when I was 28, and I didn't have any preparation as for profession here in U.S. I was an English major, which was useless when English is a mother language here in this country. But I met a couple of wonderful women bosses, mentors, who urged me that I should really go into a profession, and that she suggested, well, social work is one, you spend 2 years in master's program and you can become, you can help people. And that's how I started out as a social worker. And then after about 10 years, I realized I needed a lot more. I needed to learn more. And that's when I decided to go back into graduate school and pursue psychology as my final profession.
And how was your experience in graduate school for psychology, Dr. True?
I hear so much about the problems that people encounter in the traditional graduate schools. I've heard, a number of women of color psychologists talk about how they were such minorities and how they were really met with all kinds of barriers. Well, I went to it's California School of Professional Psychology, and it was a few years when it got started in California as a way against the traditional psychology. So my class was full of minority and full of teachers who are really open to all kinds of new ideas. So I had lots of colleagues, not just women, but other male colleagues who were wonderful and the understanding of women's issues. And, we all shared our concerns about being a minority. So, it was a wonderful, really nurturing graduate school experience, which is contrary to many others who went to the very traditional established graduate school programs.
I am actually very happy that you said that, because we have this connection. I graduated from Alliance International University myself.
Oh, you did?
I did. I
Wow.
went to the Fresno campus.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you said that, and
Wonderful.
I also know about that, I'm like, that's how we connect. And Pooja is currently a grad student at Alliance.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, I'm in my third year of my PhD program, and actually I moved to the US when I was 23 to pursue my MFT at California School of Professional Psychology, and that's when kind of how I began my journey. But no, it's nice that we're all from that school. But
Wow.
yeah.
Wonderful. Hi, sisters.
Hi, I know we're sisters in that regard. I love it.
I know our programs had lots of opposition from the regular old-fashioned psychologists, and we survived and thrived, and we have lots of minority leaders who came out of that program.
Yes, yes. We really have. And a lot of our AAPA leaders are faculty at
Yes.
Alliant.
Right.
Or
right.
dean.
Yes. Absolutely. Deborah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first clinical supervisor, also Dr. Helen, was also part of California School of Professional Psychology. So it's nice to have so many of our elders and like mentors also, go through that as well. So, Dr. True, we also know that you were the first woman president of AAPA and the Asian American Psychology Association. So, can you share a little with us about, how you kind of got into leadership and what made you want to run for president and what that journey was like for you within AAPA?
Thank you. I need to make a correction. I'm not the first women AAPA president. The first AAPA president is Dr. Christine Ijima Hall.
I'm so sorry. Thank you for correcting me.
No. But so we really need to acknowledge her leadership.
Yeah.
And after when she was through with her presidency, she called me up and urged me to run for presidency. And it didn't occur to me about running because I was very busy at the time. I was running a program in San Francisco, huge mental health service and substance abuse service system for the whole San Francisco. And it was just a tremendously stressful work. And right after that, I took half a year to go to provide assistance in Kobe for when they had a great disaster in Kobe. So, I was really busy. But then when I came back and when Dr. Hall urged me to run, I thought, well, if and Christine really felt that she made a difference and that perhaps it's about time women did serve as a leader. So I was the second president of AAPA. And AAPA was originally a very male psychologist-dominated organization, but they made a big change by that time that I ran. And so we had a wonderful board of directors. The vice president at the time was Dr. Rich Lee. So we had a wonderful partnership together.
Thank you so much for sharing the history of AAPA, because you're absolutely right. It's important for us to honor and get that information correct. So thank you for correcting me. And we actually did have Dr. Rich Lee on a previous episode along with his brother recently.
So I hear.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier when before we started the podcast, we were just chit-chatting, and I was just telling Dr. True, how, the previous guest that we've had in our podcast. Dr. True,
the other thing I would like to mention also is the role of Dr. Alice Chan. Have you heard of her?
Yes.
During my presidency, Dr. Chan proposed, along with other, I think, psychologists, that we create a division of women in AAPA. And there was no division in AAPA at the time. And there was quite a bit of opposition for doing that. And, some of us women feel maybe it was because it was proposed as a division of women. But the reason they opposed was that then, we would not be able to be united together, that having a division would divide up the AAPA. Well, we kind of overcame that opposition, and now we have quite a few divisions, and we are thriving because of those divisions. Yeah. And we have a division of Southeast Asian, correct? And
Yes.
Yeah, that recently came about in AAPA, and also like the division on international students and practitioners is something that also recently came about last year.
Right.
And I've attended some of that's how I met you, Dr. True, in one of the DOW socials that Dr. Shari Wang held, and also like attending AAPA conferences. Like DOW hosts certain presentations, and I've had a little education on like the history of how that division was kind of formed and the nuances that kind of came with that.
You mentioned also, you mentioned the opposition of having a division on women. Were there any other challenges during your presidency that happened? Because I can imagine there would be.
Well, the challenges, or I think what I saw as need, is that the AAPA at that time was really dominated by Chinese and Japanese male psychologists, and I just saw that the Asian Americans in US at that time was really there's an increasing number of other Asians, including Koreans, Vietnamese, Southeast Asians, South Asians. So we felt that there's need for including a lot more Asians, and that was really a very, very difficult, slow start. But now, I mean, I'm just so delighted that we have such wonderful, active other Asian Pacific Islander. Well, not so much Pacific Islander, but Asian, multi-Asian ethnic representations in our division AAPA. It's wonderful. So that was the main challenge at the time. Yeah.
How were you able to overcome those challenges?
Really reaching out to other communities, not just trying to really in the graduate level, but really kind of spreading the words of psychology and mental health to variety of Asian American communities, so that there would be more students who become interested and more families who are supportive of kids going into psychology. I think so many of the Asian families had no idea what psychology was all about, and that they did not consider that as a successful, promising career for their children. But I think now there's much greater understanding and appreciation for the psychology, I think.
Yeah. So Dr. True, something we are like very curious about and also very grateful for is your involvement with communities of color is very extensive, and thank you for all that you've done and all that you do. And we've learned that your advocacy work started around the late 1964s, and it preceded your work with communities hit by disaster. So we'd love to hear about your experience with how your community works, specifically working with survivors of natural disasters in other countries began, and what that experience was like.
Okay. 64, if you remember, is when there was a very strong anti-war and student activist days. And I graduated from UC Berkeley School of Social Work. And that UC Berkeley was the center of the student activism. And I met quite a few activist students, and Asian Americans were still much lagging behind African American and Hispanic American activists. But we learned from them about need to really speak up when there's a need for in our community. And out of that, we formed within our own Asian American community activism. So to create services that were really not available, like in, Asian American community, we had nothing really. So it was many of us students, former students, who created new agencies. If you live in the Bay Area, now it's an established agencies like Asian Health Services and Chinatown Child Development Services, RAMS. All those were created around that time by the activism. And, I've learned from that about a collaboration among us ourselves and how we can really convince the decision makers by speaking up, advocating, and being firm about it, which I think, for Asian women like myself, is something I needed to learn, to really speak up. And I've learned it from other minority leaders, and it's been a tremendous experience for me. Within American Psychological Association, there's been wonderful minority leaders, African American leaders, and Hispanic leaders who really helped change the texture of American Psychological Association. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe some of you, quite a few of our AAPA leaders came from a program called Minority Fellowship Program.
Yes.
Rich Lee is one of them, and quite a few others. Sumio Okazaki, Connie Chen, Chris Hall, Donna Nagata. There are lots of them. Fred Beyond. They all came from Minority Fellowship Program. And I was fortunate enough to be on that committee very early on in 1978. That was ancient history, isn't it? But out of that, we have so many wonderful leaders. So I learned from that about the importance of really nurturing people who can understand their own culture, who can speak for their culture, who can speak their language. Mental health services up to that point was so much white dominated, English dominated program, and they didn't see the need for bilingual programs, bicultural programs, and that really changed over that period. And that's what I learned in doing disaster mental health. San Francisco Bay Area was hit by a big disaster called Loma Prieta earthquake, which hit San Francisco and Bay Area very badly. And I was the director of the City of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. And I had to organize citywide disaster mental health assistance. And what I learned from that is that you just could not just sit and expect people to come for services at a clinic. You had to go out into the community. You had to reach out to the minority community. You had to find programs that is culturally appropriate and have staff that spoke the language of the community. And that meant, not only Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Filipino, but Southeast Asian. At that time, we didn't have much South Indian professionals at the time, but we also try to reach out to Hispanic communities and African American communities, all based in the communities instead of expecting them to come to clinics. And also do a lot of education, community understanding about how with disaster that you are very likely, even if you are very healthy, that you have lots of scary PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndromes that, with help, they can overcome. So these are the things that I needed to work with my colleagues and provide, and also really had lots of volunteers to provide services closer to the community of color. And I learned that out of that, I was able to do the same when Japan was hit with a big Kobe earthquake. So I went to Japan, and at that time, they didn't know anything about disaster mental health. And so I had to start from the scratch about how really to provide disaster mental health, not only to the professionals, but to the community, that it's really normal to have all these scary, symptoms after the disaster. So those are the things I was able to do and accomplish during the disasters.
That is a lot of hard work.
But
And this
it
is
was
why you're a
exciting
legend. But this is why you're a legend.
work. It was a very exciting, hard work, but exciting work. Yeah. And lots of us come together.
Yeah.
Lots of collaboration.
Yeah, I like how you really spoke about, that collaboration piece where it started first when you graduated from like Berkeley, and like when you actually, while you were at Berkeley, and your activism work kind of began there. And I think something that really stood out to me from what you shared was how you really learned from other communities, like the African American community, the Latinx community, and y'all came together to really support one another, which is kind of the whole goal of our task force and this podcast, that, there is strength in solidarity. And on that note, we kind of want to know, like, we want to hear from you. So in our task force, we're not using the word ally anymore, and Dr. Coakley has kind of helped us understand the word accomplice. And so we were wondering, like, in all your work that you were doing back then, how would the word ally or accomplice be perceived like 25 years back then?
25 or almost 45, 50 years ago.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm very bad at math, so thank you for correcting me.
But, it didn't have the stigma in those days, so it was allies were allies. We helped each other. I don't think we used accomplice. Maybe accomplice may be a little more kind of have stigma, but we didn't use those words in those days. Yeah. We used, allies, colleagues. Yeah, I think more. Yeah, those were, allies were much more positively perceived, I think. Yeah. Is there some stigma about it now?
I think the reason why we're using the word accomplice rather than ally, because accomplice it's more action oriented rather than something that's passive. Because you can be an ally and maybe tweet out like, oh, I support, for instance, Black Lives Matter, but what exactly are you doing to support it?
Yeah, I see. Well, so in my, I would say, did I use the word allies a lot? I had wonderful colleagues who were, not only supportive in thoughts, but they were all very activists. Mm-hmm. We all worked together, and some of my friends, when I was, I had a major crisis in my career when I was about to be appointed as the director of mental health and substance abuse services. They thought I came number one on a civil service examination. And the rule of the civil service examination is that they have to appoint from the top three. And I was an Asian and I was a woman. There was never a director who was a woman, and never a director who was a woman of color. So there was a great deal of public opposition questioning my competency. And my friends really, said, Reiko, you just cannot, accept this kind of. There was public discussion on radios and TV about how this panel was biased toward minority, and that I couldn't possibly be the director. But it's mainly Asian American allies, but I think in African American community, Hispanic community also were supportive. But my colleagues and allies have said, Reiko, you just cannot just accept this. They went on public demonstration and they spoke up. Chinese for Affirmative Action. Have you heard of them? They, was strongly opposing these negative racist opposition. So, I was finally appointed the director, and there was a lot of question about whether I'm able to run a program when always every year they had a deficit of about $3, $4, $5 million every year. And it turns out that I had really wonderful staff and we came up with ideas about how to really look at alternative programs and create alternative programs. So we actually came in with a surplus, this increased revenue, so that there was no deficit, but there was actually surplus of about $5 million. So there was no opposition after that. So my allies in those days were really activists. They did not hesitate to speak up. They did not hesitate to demonstrate, because that's what it took. The decision makers really are sensitive to public outcry. So, as Asian Americans, I think we tend to be fairly, law-abiding and fairly kind of reserved about making demands. But I think that's something we need to learn from our other people of color who really are very affirmative about speaking up about their needs and about their opposition. And I think Asian Americans have learned from that. I think now we have wonderful speakers and wonderful leaders who really are able to speak for our needs and our issues. So I'm just very proud of them.
I thank you for sharing that story. I resonated with your experience where it seems like you have to work twice as hard to prove that you belong in that space.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you fought and you advocated for yourself, and you also had the support system, because there's really strength in numbers, and it really takes our community support to also get us through and to be able to kind of survive in this field. And even though we're talking about your journey that happened many, many years ago, and people like you and others that you've mentioned have paved the way for this generation, my generation and the future generation. And sadly it's something that we still see though, and we're still living with. And as a young woman of color who's also very passionate in leadership and has started her leadership journey very early on in my career, it's something I still not to that extent, but at my graduate program or at practicum or even in leadership positions I hold, I've always been that young leader. And so it's been really difficult and challenging to navigate. But what has also helped and what I resonated with is finding that community to kind of support you and get you through. And
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I also like the, how you've really weaved in your scholarship and community activism into one, that your scholarship is not just for the sake of getting published and doing all of this, but really to help the community. And that to me is, what I'm striving in my own career, to be a scholar activist. And I look up to you for that. So,
Thank you.
I do thank you for the work that you pave for, women of color. Really
Thank you, but it's
appreciate
a challenge, isn't it? It
Oh,
really is.
yes, it is.
No, I similarly, like I'll send, I don't know if I sent you this already, but I actually have your postcard that I also got from AAPA. And that's the only postcard I kept from the others that I kind of wrote letters to other people. And I've actually stuck it on my vision board, or like above
Oh
my
my-
study table. So like
oh
right
my
now,
God.
I can actually see that postcard, and like the quote on that is, "The yearning to learn is a tremendous growth motivating factor." And I feel like I'm in a dream right now, because I'm seeing that postcard, and then like, Dr. Donna and I are like seeing you live. And no, you truly are, you and like many others are the reasons where we're like, no, our elders have paved this way for us, and we need to continue, our activism for our future generations, because the youngsters are also our future leaders. And yeah.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. I'm just so excited. I mean, both of you are really starting out early and with confidence, and it's just really great to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So with a lot of the community activist work that you've done, Dr. True,
Yeah.
what do you think, where can we go from here? Do you think, like, where can we go to improve upon, or even to continue the work of, scholars who have paved the way for this current generation? How can we be better allies, better accomplices?
Well, I think, do continue with what you're doing. You are really gathering together, collaborating with other people of color, which is, I think, it's the diversity that you really embrace. I think is just really absolutely necessary. I think it's wonderful that you are speaking up, and you have to continue to speak up about your issues, about your needs of community, and that, always be sensitive to what your community needs, not just your own kind of professional, career needs. I think it's hard when there's so much pressure on your career. But then I think what is important is to really not lose sight of the needs of your own community. I think it's really important that you kind of share your ideas with your colleagues, your what is it, accomplices, and,
Yes.
and really also, uh, and come join forces to really continue to advocate. There's so much more that needs to be done in our community, and there's going to be, with that times are getting harder. There's so much ominous kind of a trend in our country, which is really depressing. We thought we made some progress, and then I think maybe we are going backward. So it's all the more important that we need to really stay together, collaborate with each other, and really fight and assert ourselves. That's what I think is absolutely needed to really make it through this very difficult time that's ahead of us.
Thank you for those words of wisdom.
Yeah. I think something that I've just learned in just my 7 years of being in psychology is it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And we have to think of our community, and that's where we should start, within ourselves, within our community, and also think about, you know, the broader community, like other communities of color, and like coming together, because something that, you know, we've just noticed, like being in our positions and in the roles that we have in our lives, is even like within AAPA or like APA, even though we all come from like minoritized communities, there's a lot of microaggressions that happen just amongst ourselves, which is really not needed. And I think that's something, you know, in our leadership, or like the goal of like this podcast, or like our projects that we're doing through the task force, is really to kind of break those barriers and to kind of take a step back and understand that, hey, we all want the same things at the end of the day. And, you know, we're so few of us. And at some point, we need to kind of understand that we're all fighting the same fight in different ways, in different subjective ways, but we have that larger communal goal.
Good for you. I mean, you articulated that so well. Yeah. And I'm just so encouraged by, you know, you, when you're really still in the graduate school, and you're already way ahead of, you know, us. So I think in a way, your awareness, your kind of willingness to take on that leadership role, that's really wonderful. So keep it up.
Yeah.
Thank you. But sorry, go ahead, Dr. Donna.
Oh, I was just going to say, Pooja is one of our board of directors in AAPA, just to give her that plug. So definitely,
much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I mean, you are busy enough, but you're able to take on that. That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And I mean, honestly, it's because I have good mentors in the field who are teaching me about these things, who are teaching me how to use my voice, and, you know, who are inspiring me. Like Dr. Helen is like my role model. And,
absolutely,
you know, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't even be part of AAPA. I wouldn't even know how to get involved, because, you know, as you mentioned earlier too, when you come from an Asian country and when you immigrate into like a foreign country, you're starting to learn how to like use your voice, but then you're also dealing with all the oppression that comes with the ways your identities intersect. And I was very lucky that she was my first clinical supervisor I met here in California. And, you know, through that, I met like mentors through DOSA, like Dr. Neeta Tiwari, and, you know, like through AAPA conference planning, I met Dr. Donna, and, you know, here we are. So, and then obviously, like, I've heard so much about you, Dr. True, even before, like, I met you physically, but like from Dr. Helen, like when we'd first talk about like leadership, and she'd speak like very highly of you. So it's what our elders have kind of done for us. And, you know, having mentors in the present moment kind of guide us, because it's very scary to do this on your own.
Absolutely. So you're on the right track, and I'm just so excited about what you are able to accomplish. So I will really, you know, I'm just excited about this podcast. I mean, I'm just so technologically not savvy, but I'm getting a little hang of the podcast, and I really look forward to, you know, more podcasts from our other leaders. So thank you for taking this initiative to do this project.
We will definitely let you know once we've published our podcast. So it's a lot of them are in post-production, but we will definitely, you know, send them your way if you'd want to listen.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I think just, you know, to end, and like, thank you so much for your time and just for being here. Like, it's just so amazing that we were able to meet with you and just have this conversation with you. And I think just, you know, as young leaders, we just also kind of want to leave our listeners with any final words of wisdom you have for women of color getting into leadership roles, and any words of wisdom you want to leave us with.
Not words of wisdom, but, you know, what I would say is you're on the right track, and don't get, you know, really shy about really speaking up. Be assertive, work together, collaborate, be confident, you know. So the way future is, there's so much to be done, and I'm just so excited for you guys to continue the path that we started. So I look forward to be working with you in the future. I'll be there if you need me. So thank you
Thank
so
you
much
so
for taking
much.
the initiative.
Yes,
No,
thank you.
yeah, thank you so much, Dr. True.
I'm
It
so
was an
sorry,
absolute.
Pooja.
No, I was just gonna say we're so excited that like we normally never talk over each other, but like you can see our excitement. It's just an honor that we were able to do this with you. So thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I really hope to
Great.
see you in future AAPA conventions as
I
well.
hope so. I hope so that we can meet in person
Yes,
soon.
and take pictures, because it's not real meeting unless there's a picture to prove that we've met.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to our podcast today. We hope you enjoyed the episode. For more information about today's guests and their social media links, you can click on the description links of the episode. Pooja Mami Dana and Dr. Donna Demanarig host this podcast. Our podcast team includes our podcast interns, Alexis Rios from the University of North Texas in Denton, Texas, and Petra Zadroga from Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts. We also want to acknowledge our production team, David DeVito and Rachel Sheffer.
If you would like to know more about us or to watch video clips of this interview, then follow us on Instagram at APA-Div45_Presidential Task Force, on Twitter at APA-Div45_Coakley, or on YouTube and Facebook at Dr. Kevin Coakley, APA Division 45 Presidential Task Force.
Strength and solidarity. There's strength and solidarity.